Hi, shouts to everybody joining us here on Fiifi-Manfred. My name is Fiifi-Manfred. This is Fiifi-Manfred on YouTube. Thank you very much for joining us. If you are new to the channel, do subscribe to the channel. You should. Of course, if you're not subscribed, do subscribe to the channel. Of course, do turn on notification as well. And when you do, the button comes, do choose all in there and get a job done and subscribe to the channel. My name is Fiifi-Manfred. Thank you. Shouts to everybody, actually, especially in Kenya. Those guys that watch in Kenya, you guys are brilliant. My Nigerian brothers, Omo, I thank you. Of course, the guys in the UK, in the US, grateful for your support and everything. Of course, my people in Ghana, blessings for all the stuff that you are doing here on Fiifi-Manfred on YouTube. I am very, 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 very grateful. In fact, more than grateful for the support. And thank you. So, control the center, control the game, control the middle, control the game. Which is which? Why are teams trying to invert players, overload the midfield, overload central areas in a bid to control games? That is why we are here today. It's a big question because I've seen a lot of teams do these things, not just Pep Guardiola. And I've actually seen versions of Pep Guardiola's inversions, whether from fullback, from centre back, from the attack, just to try and overload midfield, just to have extra numbers. But yeah, that's exactly why we are here. Thank you very much for joining me on Fiifi-Manfred. I will be back with you in a jiffy to give you all the juice. Aston Villa, Spurs, Chelsea, Manchester City, and all the guys that do a lot of the inversion also for Arsenal. And the importance of it and which principle is it hinged on. Let's do that on Fiifi-Manfred on YouTube. See you. Sure, that for every modern day fan of the game, people have used words like total dominance, total control, teams having possession and whatnot. For positional play, it's a brilliant form of playing the game. You know, usually people want either positional play or functionality. For positional play, you don't predetermine the positions of the player. It's hinged on how the game is going, where the game is going to. So it is dependent on how the game is going. That is when Bernardo Silva will either make a decision to underlap or overlap. It is dependent on where the game is going. That is when Jack Grealish will be more direct to take on players or will do a lot more of the ball retention job for Manchester City. It is dependent on where the game is going. That is when Cole Palmer will skip the width and wait for Reece to overlap, or will come inside and allow Reece to keep the width. That is the positional play. And it is in positional play that has bettered a lot of the superiorities. Usually you want more superiorities in positional play because it is not static, it is not rigid. It's actually hinged on game state, the state of the game at a point in time. And a lot of teams have done brilliant work in that regard. Chelsea, Arsenal, Manchester City, a lot of the teams, Xavi's Barcelona, Pep Guardiola's Barcelona, and whatnot. So these are things that are there. But there seem to be versions. So first of all, let's start with the king himself, Joseph Guardiola, right? So Pep Guardiola, he used to do this in a Johan Cruyffian way, where first of all, when he was at Barcelona, he would play false nines. So essentially, the false number 9 doesn't occupy forward line areas. They will drop into central areas to overload, either to receive the ball, either to evade the press, either to help beat the press actually in central areas. And then they end up as a last-minute box attacker. They crash the box at the last part, usually at the tip of the 18-yard box, and then try to smash home goals. Some of them, David Villa was brilliant at it. Pedro Rodriguez, he used him at some of these games when he was there. And that 2009 all-conquering Barcelona side in the Champions League was brilliant in this regard. But the game has since evolved, where teams learn how to deal with false nines in a structure. So teams usually at first will chase down a false nine. Defenders will follow him in every area and will not be tight enough. These days, there are two ways. Teams follow these false number 9s and are tight enough. They do not allow you receive the ball on the 10. And whilst they do all of these things, there's also a structure behind them to deal with the space that has been let in there. It can be the DM, it can be the center back, and whatnot. So teams have learned to deal with these things. And it makes so much sense when they want to deal with stuff like this because they deal with the space and also deal with the man. But teams have evolved. Teams have grown. Teams see how things want to do, especially for Pep Guardiola. And when he came to Manchester City, it was essentially a 4-3-3 flat with very high and wide wingers. Leroy Sané, Raheem Sterling. Nobody essentially cutting inside as an inverted winger or something. They just cut in with the ball. And then when they do occupy the half spaces, of course, the fullbacks will take up the wide areas and they do occupy all the 5 zones of the pitch, which was brilliant, which was working. It worked for a very long time. They didn't have issues. It's just that Pep is just a brilliant bastard where he knows that he brings up this way of play and then he knows that guys in the English Premier League would want to learn from him. He finds the frailties of that and then brings up a different way of play which can thrive, which can trump over that form of playing. And that makes a lot of sense, right? It is actually very, very good for somebody to have that mindset. And it was last season where he knows that you need a lot of positional play. You need a lot of effectiveness. And then to win games in a league, a lot of positional play, a lot of free-flowing attacking football to win games in the league. But in the Champions League, you need control. So a lot of these coaches also know that control is something that's difficult to get up because the game is chaotic. You can't control every moment of the game, but you want to control large parts of the game. Then essentially you are controlling the game. How do you control the game? Especially in Champions League games when you play teams like Real Madrid, who are lovers of the chaotic game, with Ancelotti especially, who hinges his gameplay on functionality. He doesn't want to tell Vinicius Junior what to do, in what zone to stay. He just wants to allow you do the job that you can do by getting you there. That's all. Just functionality. It gives you the tools to function. That is all. Pep Guardiola would want to try a little bit restrict you. Now in attack, we want to occupy all the 5 zones. But that's also hinged on how the game is going. And that's to determine where the game will be. So all of them don't essentially tell the players verbatim what to do, but there are some nuances, some very, very small, minute differences in between the lines in there. And it is in this that has born the love for control, especially hinged on numerical superiority. So control can be had in defense. Control isn't only in central areas. People have control in the defensive area, in build-up, control in attack. I've said consistently that Chelsea doesn't have enough control in attack. There is some level of control with Cole Palmer, but in the box, especially when the ball falls to Jackson, he is not an excellent ball manipulator. So regardless of how good the ball falls to him, sometimes he doesn't manipulate the ball well and he doesn't have control and flouts his chances. That's an example of control in the attacking third, in the box of the opposition, which is important. But largely for positional play, there is the school of thought that immediately you control the middle or you control central areas, you're controlling the game. So because of that, it has borne a lot of good stuff. First of all, Pep Guardiola in recent times, since he needed control in the Champions League, did something brilliant. He used a vibro, sort of like in the past. John Stones essentially, who starts in a back 4, more nominally as a fullback. He comes inverted into central areas to come and partner Rodri in those areas, and they play as a double pivot. In this double pivot, he usually had Ike Gundogan and then Bernardo Silva on top of him. Sometimes Ike Gundogan, Kevin De Bruyne. They form that box midfield to have a 4. And in that box midfield, one, they are close-knitted. The spaces in between them is short and also very far and wide. It depends on whether vertical or horizontal, how you are looking at it, like a box. So they go together in winning duels. They pick up second balls when they go to press. Also, when they want to open up and receive the ball, they open up into slide zones, receive the ball, and then play forward. It was very effective, especially against Madrid. That is exactly what they needed. But even before Pep Guardiola, Thomas Tuchel had done that in his 3-4-3. In his 3 at the back flat, there was a box midfield of 4, where essentially he used Jorginho, N'Golo Kante, Messi Mount to play out from wide areas, come into the middle of the park, then he drops someone. The 3-box-3. Very, very essential. Pep has a different version also, where, especially this season, since the injury of John Stones, what he has done is that he has made Kyle Walker push very high and wide to occupy the opponent zone. Once he does that, someone like Phil Foden drops into the middle of the park, or Bernardo Silva. So now he doesn't have... Kyle Walker is not the kind of guy that can manipulate, especially... In fact, he started with Joao Cancelo, from those areas. Then John Stones came. John Stones will start from CB area, drop into central midfield with Rodri and get a job done. Now this times John Stones is injured. Jack Cancelo is not there. Kyle Walker is playing at fullback. He's the captain of the team. He pushes Kyle Walker very high and wide on the opponent's area. He joins the opponent's attacking. He joins the attacking line. And then Phil Foden or one of the number 10s inside number 10s. He essentially uses Julian Alvarez as an inside 10. Come inside to control the middle of the park. It is purely for control. If it is Jack Grealish, it is for retention control. If it is Phil Foden, it's also for retention. He has a low center of gravity, difficult for you to rob him off the ball, carried forward, and all of these things. It's also in the turnovers, they are close knitted and they can help in counter pressing and winning the ball back again. So he wants that control. And it's in the light of control that he has 3 flat center backs at the back as well. Control. He wants to control the attacking part. Control essentially isn't only about having the ball. Diego Simeone's 5-3-2 at Atletico de Madrid, it's about control. He will essentially lie to you that you can play the ball out wide. He baits you in playing the ball out wide. He will not put pressure on you on wide areas. And you get a pseudo sense that there is some penetrative space in central areas. You bring the ball back. But his players are shuffled too closely and tight such that in those areas, in wide areas, you can't play through them. And he has excellent control without the ball. The 5-3-2 of Diego Simeone in central areas, it's about control in central areas without the ball. So there's control without the ball. There's control with the ball. There's control in different zones of the pitch, in different phases of play. It is important to note that. With the inversion as well, I've seen another new one from Tottenham Hotspur manager Ange Postecoglou, where what he does is also brilliant. Now, what Ange has been doing in recent times is that Ange actually has his 2 fullbacks. So Ange usually plays in the 4-2-3-1. In the 4-2-3-1, there's Christian Romero, there's Van de Ven, Edoje Porro, then there is Papi Matassa, there is Yves Bissouma as a 2 CMs, there's a number 10 in Madison. Son essentially plays like a striker, Dejan Kulusevski and Brandon Johnson, or Richarlison if he's fit. Now, what he actually does is that in this way of play, when they are progressing the ball, the 2 center backs will open up, Van de Ven, Christian Romero, and then he draws Papi Matassa in between them. Now, instead of before the fullbacks going to occupy high and wide positions, Pedro Porro usually first comes inverted into the center of the park. Once Pedro Porro drops in there, it is also a trigger for Edoje to come in. Once Edoje comes in, both of them will form a double pivot, or sometimes Pedro Porro will form it with Yves Bissouma. Then Edoje will move up top to form a 2 pair, or form the top of the box with James Maddison on top. Then the box midfield is formed. Now, Kulusevski, Brandon Johnson keep the width. It is in this area that when the ball starts from central areas, they manipulate the ball so well, such that the ball gets to Kulusevski in 1v1 area. Quickly, it's a trigger for Pedro Porro to come and do the overlap. And the same for the other side. If Brandon Johnson gets the ball, it's a trigger for Edoje to go and do the overlap. And that's how they were beating teams and manipulating backlines that were sitting deep. That was very difficult to break down. We're having total control in central areas. They were pressing and counter pressing, have a very high line to make the pitch very constricted, and they win the ball back and they play forward. And people are like, it is control. But they're just different versions of control, different types of control. Where do you want the control? How do you want the control? In which zone do you want the control? How do you want the control? Essentially, it's about having numerical superiority. And you go back and you look at these things and you're like, wow, okay, this is brilliant stuff. Arsenal, that's same. Arsenal essentially does it with either of Thomas Partey or Alexander Zinchenko. You remember in recent times, Partey has started nominally at right back, and I've constantly said he's not a right back. He's not playing as a right back. He's starting there nominally as a right back. And once, usually when Timber was not injured, Partey comes from right back areas, comes into central area with the other DM. Jorginho, Thomas Partey, then Declan Rice will push up with Martin Odegaard. They form the box midfield. Before that, last season, it was Alexander Zinchenko. He is an expert in coming inverted because essentially a midfielder playing a fullback. So Zinchenko comes from left back, comes inverted with Partey, who was starting with Declan Rice nominally as a double pivot. Dex pushes up, they form that. And then Bukayo Saka, Gabriel Martinelli keep the width. Gabriel Jesus will be marauding in central areas, making sure that he wins those balls for them. So control is so important in modern day. control the middle, control the game, control the middle, control the game, control the middle, control the game. It's such an important part of the game. I'm seeing a different version of Mauricio Pochettino's control, where he uses Enzo Fernandez, Moise Caicedo, both as the base. None of them they are the base. But in that base, he uses Cole Palmer, his two wingers, Cole Palmer to come inverted, and then Raheem Sterling. You saw it clearly. So once Cole Palmer comes inverted, he forms a box mate for Conor Gallagher in there. Sometimes Raheem Sterling even comes in to join in to make it 5. So that the fullbacks, usually if James is fit, it's usually on the right hand side, will overlap quickly. So James will push up to go and join the opposing backline in a 3-2-5 in there. Then you have him in there. Then essentially you have your central control as well. So yeah, teams know that control is very important. And these are a lot of the controls on the ball. I've told you about Atletico Madrid's control without the ball. I saw Jose Mourinho's Internacional Milan have explicit total control against Barcelona at the Camp Nou without the ball. So it's there for everybody to see. So yeah, guys, this is the end of today's session. My name is Fiifi-Manfred. I'm grateful to have had you here. This is Fiifi-Manfred on YouTube. If you're not subscribed, you subscribe. This was an exciting one. I loved it. I love walking you through this. Make sure you subscribe and do turn on notification. Choose all as well.